All right, we're looking at A72, and we're doing some more practice on factoring and solving. Now, if you take a quick scan on this whole worksheet, everything is already set equal to 0, and it's in standard form with the square, the power of 1, and then no variable. So we've got that ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, if you look at the first chunk of this, all of the values in front of the x squared or n squared, they're all 1. It doesn't hit until we get to number 10 that you have a number out front. So let's talk about two different problems. Let's do number 4. So number 4 is already set equal to 0. And the only way to solve this, first of all, it says solve by factoring. The only way to solve this, because it's a quadratic, is by factoring. There are other methods of solving. You guys could use the quadratic formula. You could solve using something called complete the square, which we did not do. You could solve by graphing, but we are factoring. So when I go to factor this, I am doing my reverse FOIL. 2 sets of parentheses still equal to 0. N times n, there's my first term, so this is nothing new. What are my factors of negative 99? They're going to add up to negative 2. Well, 99 is a double digit, so what goes into every double digit? 11. So I was thinking of negative 99 as 11 and 9. Now, I needed one of them to be negative, so the 11 should be negative, so it adds up to negative 2, the outer and inner. So that's the old news, you know, all the factoring. But we want to double check we got it right. What's new is using our zero product property. We have something times something equals 0. What would make this equal 0? What would wipe out this whole set of parentheses? If n was positive 11, what would make this 0? If n was negative 9. So what you are doing is, some people remember, oh, I'm changing the sign, or it's the opposite sign. What I noticed some people doing yesterday is that they were thinking of the factors and answering the question as negative 11 and 9. The factors are negative 11 and 9, but the answers come down to the opposite, because 11 minus 11 will make the 0 and wipe it out. So instead of trying to go right to the answer, you need to take that minute to factor it, especially when it says solve by factoring. Part of your answer is the factoring, and then the final part is the solving. Okay, what's different about number 5 and number 8 compared to what we just did? Look at 5 and 8. What's different about these two? I only have 2 numbers. What number is missing? That middle one, right? Like here we have a P. Here we have an N. Well, this is called a difference of squares because they are both perfect squares. But how do I get a negative 121? How do I get the middle to cancel out? N and N, 1 positive 11, 1 negative 11. So it has to be a difference of squares. So both squares, we got our n squared, we've got our negative 121. The outside's negative 11n and the inside's positive 11n. That's where that 0n comes from. All right, what would make this 0 if n was negative 11 or positive 11? So you can write your answer like that. What's the other way you might see this answer?
Negative 11, 11.
You could see it like that, like you could just see negative 11, comma, or you could see a plus minus 11. All right, so let's talk about number 10. Number 10 is not the easier factoring. Like this is easier factoring. Factors of 30 add up to 13, 10, and 3. Boom. I can factor that. That's not my answer. That's going to help me factor. The factors of negative 112 won't add up to 40 or negative 40 because of that 8. Before I jump in and do my reverse FOIL, what should I always try first?
GCF.
Yeah, is there a GCF?
8.
I mean, they all divide by 2 and 4. Can I divide everything by 8?
Yes.
So you just test it and make sure it works. So 8 goes into everything, so I'm going to show that. Divide everything by 8. So I get what? R squared minus 5R minus, that's 112 divided by 8. 112 divided by 8 is certainly not 9. What is 112 divided by 8? 12. What did you say? 12. Do we agree with him? Oh, well, that's not helpful. 8 times 10 is 80. No, that's not going to work. What is it? 14.
I knew it.
All right. You know. Okay, now this is easier factoring, guys. The 8 stays out, 2 sets of parentheses, R times R. I need factors of negative 14 to add up to negative 5. So I was going with 7 and 2. Which one should be negative? Negative 7, because I need the bigger one to keep that negative sign. Okay, now I have it all factored. Did I solve it yet? So I have 3 pieces here. I've got 8, I've got r minus 7, and r plus 2. Will 8 ever be 0? No. What would make this 0?
7 minus 7.
If r was 7, it'd be great if everyone was looking up here and paying attention. Or what would make this 0?
-2.
If r was -2. So I can show my 2 answers like that, or I could put a comma. All right. If you look at number 11, there's a front number, and there's only 2 terms. So take out the front number, and it should be a difference of squares. But if you look at number 14, there's a front number. Before I jump in is add GCF. Yeah, everything divides by 7. So I'm not going to finish this one for you, but I'm going to help you set it up. And I want to jump to the back. So everything on the front is easier factoring, because if there was a leading coefficient, it had a GCF that came out and then it factored down. So I'm going to remind you again, take out the GCF in number 11, show what's left, and then factor it down. And don't forget your final answer, x equals. Okay, don't forget your final answer, v equals. Now, jump to the back, because the front, like I said, is the more basic factoring. If you jump to the back, there's a little bit more here. So look at number 15. Notice I only have 2 terms there. While the last ones that had only 2 terms are difference of squares. Guys, this is not a difference of squares. Sometimes you just need a GCF. What would the GCF be? A 4 and an r. What's left? R plus 8 equals 0. So I divided by 4, and I knocked down an r. That's it. It's factored. 4 will always be 4, but what could make r 0? If r is 0, what would make r plus 8 0?
-8.
R is -8. Okay, so I will tell you that 15, 16, 17, they're just GCF problems. Now, if you jump to 18, and I know you want to probably finish these, but I'm going to give you time to work. If you look at 18, 19, and 20, those are the ones you're going to have to put some effort into, because there's no GCF that goes into 13, and this one doesn't have a GCF. So pick one, 18, 19, or 20. Which one do you want to do?
20.
All right, I heard 18 from multiple people. But when I look at 18, the first thing I tried for was a GCF. There isn't one. This is where I'm going to have to do trial and error. What are my options to get the 6x squared? 3 and 2, or what? 6 and 1. What are my options to get a positive 6? 3 and 2, or 6 and 1. What kind of signs do I want? I need 2 negatives, don't I? The reason I need 2 negatives is because they have to multiply to positive, but add up to negative. Now here's the deal. I'm using an erasable pen. Pretty fancy. But here's my problem. If I do the 3a and 2a, I can't put the 3 in with the 3. Do you remember that? Because there's no GCF. So I'm automatically going to put it in as a -2 here and a -3 here. Now, what do I have to check for? The outside and inside, right? So the outside is -9a, and the inside is -4a. And what did I get? I got -13a. So I actually did get exactly what I needed. So if I would have put it in as a 3 and a 2, it would not have worked. I would have flipped the numbers. If that didn't work, remember, we try again. But I couldn't put the 6 with either of these because they both have factors. So if that didn't work, I would have started again with the 6 and the 1. Okay, this is how it factored. Now, this is the one that we have to think a little bit more about. What would make this 0? Well, if there was no 3 here, the only thing that would make it 0 would be 2. But there's a 3 there. This is where it'd be positive 2/3. We take our 3a minus 2, set it equal to 0 off to the side. I would add 2 and then divide by 3. So that's where the 2/3 comes from. Now, if you're following that pattern, picture this. You would add the 3, so it'd be positive, right? And what would you divide by? 2. So some of you can do that and you are good. Some of us probably should write it down so we don't flip-flop things or need to write it down, and that's fine. So I'm setting what's in my parentheses equal to 0, and then I'm solving it by adding 3 and dividing by 2. All right, so those are my 2 answers. I will do one more. You want me to do 19, since that's what I heard someone else ask for? Okay. First thing I'm going to do is look for a GCF, because it'd make it so much easier. Unfortunately, I have no GCF. So I'm going to drop in 2 sets of parentheses, and I'm focusing on my first and my last. What are my options for 4? 2 and 2? 4 and 1. What are my options for negative 9? But one of them has to be negative, right? Okay, what else can be negative 9? Yep. Now, remember, if I get the right number, wrong sign, I flip signs. So signs are the easy fix. All right, I'm going to try my double digits. So 2a and 2a and a positive 3 and a negative 3. Okay, I'm checking the outer and the inner. Here we go. This gives me a negative 6a and a positive 6a. Okay, does that give me negative 16a? No. So 3 and negative 3 didn't work. Now, normally we'd flip them, but they're double digits, so I'm going to throw them out and go to 9 and 1. All right, get rid of everything that doesn't work here. I'm not worried about the signs, so 9 and 1. This would be a positive, or no, this would be a negative 2a, and this would be a positive 18a. All right, so what did I get? Negative 2a and positive 18a. What did I get?
Negative 16.
Well, I got 16a. What did I want to get? So I got the right number, but what? Switch the signs. All right, unnecessary. Negative, positive. So now I have a positive 2a, but by switching the signs, it gave me a what? Negative 18a, which adds up to negative 16. Okay, so I had to do a little effort to factor. If that didn't work, I would have had to throw it out and try with 4 and 1. But I haven't solved it yet. So take a second and solve this. I'll wait for you. You take a second and you solve it for the 2 values of a. Some of you are doing it in your head. Some of you need to write it down. What I'm doing is I'm looking at each piece. Either this equals 0 or that equals 0. So if you're looking at this, this would be 9 halves, or 4.5 or 4.5. And where did I get that from? I took it out and I said this whole piece could be 0. I would add 9 and then divide by 2. That's why the sign changes, because you would have to move it to the other side to solve for it. Okay? This one should be a negative 1/2. So if you're able to do that in your head and you're not flipping them and you're getting the right sign, I'm fine with that. But if you're struggling with that, take it off to the side and solve it. Subtract 1 from both sides. 2a equals negative 1. Divide both sides by 2. So there are my 2 answers. So the only other one that's going to give you a little bit more work is number 20 for the factoring. But I will say when you do 17 and 16, it's just a GCF, but you have to double check what you have in parentheses to make sure your answer's right.